welcome back to another episode of Coaches on Zoom Drinking Coffee. I'm really looking forward to this because we've just spent 15 minutes realizing that we live in the same world. Ellen Cohen, it's great to have you here, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's just crazy. We just realized how our worlds collide in so many different ways.
And you know, it's really interesting because I was just telling you that I'm right now in the middle of going through one of Rich Litvin's intensive programs, which you then told me you were part of. And, you know, a lot of great content and all that. But one of the big things for me, and actually was the reason I sought it out, was this idea of being around other people, both high achievers and those also still just starting on their journey, but getting the energy that comes from being around people that are sort of in the same space as you. What's sort of your experience been, you know, whether it's through Rich or through, you know, your coaching career, of being part of a community like that?
Well, I think that our coaching community is what certainly up levels us, and we're all in the same community together. And it's not about competition. It's really about how do we, you know, each of us has our expertise, each of us has our space. And even if we're doing the exact same coaching, we all bring such a different element to the table. And each of us is so unique, and it's like more like dating, you know. It's like if somebody's going to hire you, it's really about, do you connect with this person? And people could have the same resume, but they're just energetically different people, and they have nobody on this planet has your background, nor mine, nor anybody else's. I mean, there's just we're all unique. So being in a community really helps us, you know, up level and hear what other people are doing and just get better.
Yeah, it's absolutely been a great experience so far. So one of the topics we talked about this week, and it just came to mind because it's a great introduction question, is be weird versus wide. And this idea of, and you just kind of touched on it, is, you know, if you try to be wide and try to be something for everyone, you ultimately don't connect with anybody. But if you play to your weirdness and your, you know, and in a positive sense of the word, funny enough, there are other weird people just like you out there who actually will really resonate. So if I was to ask the question of what's your weirdness, what does Ellen bring to the coaching community that is completely unique combination of that life experience, perspective, and skill set that you have? What would that be?
You know, I think I just read this book called Range by David Epstein, and he talks, have you read that book?
Not yet, no, it's on my list.
Super interesting. I can give you other books. And by the way, in your background, did you read Bounce by David Said? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Which is sort of like almost like the opposite perspective. But in Range, one of the things that he talks about is this sort of like cross-training Renaissance person, where you have experience in so many different buckets that all of those come together. And this is sort of what Steve Jobs talks about in terms of how he got where he was. Is so what I have is such a very broad background of different experiences that make me really unique and, you know, perhaps weird. You know, and throughout my entire life, I've always been kind of like the academic and the athletic. And so that's been my contrast for my entire life, being like the AP student, but also being on a team. And so in high school and college, I was on varsity teams, and then I taught group fitness, and then I was I teach yoga and meditation and all this woo-woo stuff from, you know, and yet I'm also a lawyer. And I've worked at all the major studios, and I've, you know, done all that kind of like executive, very analytical, logical, and, you know, get it done, problem solving. And then there's this whole other side. So I think that's what makes me unique and weird.
Yeah, that's a beautiful.
What about you?
Well, yeah, I embrace the weirdness. I actually, well, I'll tell my story, and then I actually used that line last night with a group that I coached, and it was really well received. So my weirdness, you know, I think that I've spent a lot of time kind of reflecting on my life to say, what are the things where I've really connected with people? And that to me is sort of where my weirdness has shown itself, which is I am for some reason, have this deep passion for tapping into people's potential. And I know that's an overused word, but it's this idea that people go around and they know they have something in them more than what has been expressed. And I just have always had ability. My parents told me, even when I was like 7, 8 years old, I'd get the neighborhood kids together and organize games and things. And I'd go around and like help kids be successful at the different activities, right? It was like climbing over the fence or whatever. I would be like teaching and helping and supporting. So I guess my weirdness is this ability to connect with people around limiting beliefs or limiting behaviors and tap into something where they see in me somebody who really cares and really wants to help them succeed. And I guess people, I don't know how to describe it any more than that in any more weird way, because maybe one of the limitations I've carried around for a long time is actually having had a hard time seeing the weirdness from the outside. You know, my experience is all in sport and athletics, but at my heart, I've always felt like all I've really been trying to do is to tap into sort of this human potential that people have in some way. So I don't know if that's weird or if that's just, the way it comes across is unique to me because, as you said, I have unique life experiences. I have unique ways of communicating. I bring unique energy, and that connects with people in a certain way, or it doesn't, which is perfectly fine as well.
And that's just like dating, like you can meet this person who's got the perfect resume and they're like exactly like they look exactly right. And you go like, oh my gosh, that person whose resume and looks is my soulmate. And then you meet them and you're like, no chemistry. We're just not connecting. And it has nothing to do with them not being amazing.
No.
It's just, and I remember a long time ago, like many, many years ago, I had a therapist who said to me, and I think this is such a great analogy, is, and this is a girl analogy, but when you go shopping and there's this dress on the rack and you pick out that dress and you're like, oh my gosh, I love the style, I love the color, I love everything about this is the cutest dress ever. And then you put it on and it is no longer a cute dress. It looks terrible on you.
Right.
And you take off the dress and you have to put it away, put it back. It has nothing to do with the dress not being perfect and amazing and so cute. Just it's not for you, and neither one of you is broken or defective. It's just, both of you still remain exactly perfect the way you were. Mm-hmm. It's just, and that's just the way it is in dating and coaching, anything that's just about, like that connection.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, it's also, it's people can read intention, right? People can read the energy that comes from somebody of are you there to sort of serve yourself, or are you there to serve somebody else? And it's been really cool to be part of this coaching community over the last, I've been part of coaching community all my career, but this new coaching community the last week, to see all the unique ways that people can express positive intention, like the unique little niche areas that people operate in are fascinating, and how they've created this definition of what their gift, or that sort of, secret gift that they carry around is. So for you now, because like I love the sort of the broad background, which makes you very adaptable, but you still have to kind of connect to a certain audience, or have an audience that connects to you. Is there language that you use in the kind of coaching you do, or how do you create those connections?
So this is a really interesting question, because I'm kind of at that place where I'm really rethinking it all, and I'm just designing an entirely new coaching model. And I mean, completely. So my niche previously was, so I've spent, as I said before, most of my career as a corporate executive / attorney. Okay. So I worked at all the major studios. I was in a role called business affairs, which meant I negotiate talent agreements. but I've also been in-house counsel. I've been general counsel. I've worked for all these different corporations, so I understand the whole corporate mentality and politics and culture. And yet, I coach a lot of people in those spaces, but it's just not an area that I've been able to create a lot of energy around for myself. And it's not exactly where I want to be. And so I've been reading a lot of books, and I'm taking a lot of different ideas and synthesizing them into more of a something that I'm much more excited about. And many people have told me that if you were to describe me in one word, my one word is being a motivator. Okay. And so ever since I was in college, I was voted most motivational on my team, and I taught group fitness classes, and I'm a rah-rah person. I'm sort of like you to that degree, you know, like you can do it type of person. And I realized that in the coaching that I'm doing, it's not a you can do it type of model. And so I'm so I'm coming up with a new model really about and which is particularly relevant now. It's really about thinking about like the difference between like a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and innovation and creativity and breaking out of kind of like that glass ceiling mindset where there's no place else to go. And I'm creating this whole model based on a lot of different things with a lot of different steps. And so it's going to be a lot more inspirational, a lot more motivational, a lot more, my outreach is going to be, there are going to be more people who would fall into it, but it's going to be more niche of a person who feels like this is the right space for them. So I'm still cultivating who am I reaching, who is that person, but it's like I don't know. So it's still kind of in the midst of being developed.
Yeah. So
I know, see how animated I get.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So it's about helping people design a transition of some sort using a bunch of different tools to help them do that.
Yeah. And it's really, breaking out of, I like to think of this idea of kind of like your mental glass ceiling. At where you're, and you were talking about self-limiting beliefs, and that glass ceiling is sort of that self-limiting belief, but it's also like, I think, especially these days, not thinking about the future in a novel and unique way, in terms of like, you can't think of something that's been working and go, I'm going to continue to do that. You have to look at every single thing and basically stress test it and think about it. And what happens if everything completely changed and the way you were doing it before no longer works? Right. So how can you evolve? And that's what you have to do. I mean, that's the failings of such major companies like Kodak and Blockbuster and Polaroid, and even the film and television industry and the music industry, who fail to see, the digitization and the whole changing world. And then they're so far behind, it's so hard to catch up, and they lose market space to the upstarts who are thinking in that way, which is kind of like that blue ocean strategy, blue ocean shift. So
yeah, cool. So doing the sort of blue ocean strategy, but with humans, with individuals as opposed to organizations. Yeah. Love it.
And I have all these different models that I put together in ways to look at it. So like 8 steps that I'm working through. This just happened last week, by the way.
That's super cool. Well, I totally get that, because again, having to reflect on what I'm doing and where I want to get to has been a really interesting experience to maybe think, where is there a shift that I need to be looking at? Like, because my background for the last 25 years has been working with a lot of young people. So I coach in university settings with master's degree students, and I love that work. And it's consistent with having coached high performance athletes in the past who were similar age, similar ambition, similar, struggles internally in terms of self-belief, and like all the same stuff. But I talked to a group of them last night, 40 students, and I almost used the same words you just used, which was, you can't look at your career through the same lens that your career counselor would have told you even 8 months ago. things have changed.
8 weeks ago.
8 weeks. Yeah. It's true enough. Yeah. Yeah. And so, and the conversations we had were, when you're 25 years old, you actually have, uh, in terms of what you bring to the table, what you bring most of is actually life experience, and then academic experience, and then work experience is usually the order. If you took the volume of what you have to offer the world at 25, you have 25 years of life experience. You might have, 10, 12 years of meaningful academic experience, and then you've got a little bit of work experience perhaps. But most young people go out and try to lead with, the academic experience or the work experience, and forget that they actually are a human being that's super passionate about a whole bunch of things that actually have careers within them. And so I love doing this exercise of mashup exercises where we take all these things, mix them together, and see what kinds of jobs exist in that intersection of those three worlds, that sort of Venn diagram of, their personal passions, their academics, and their work experience. And I love how that opens them up to possibility. It's actually one of my favorite books on the bookshelf to my right is The Art of Possibility. It's by Benjamin Zander, who's an orchestra leader. And, I think of working with students much like an orchestra leader, where I've got 40 of them at a time, and I coach them in full group and then small groups and some one-on-one stuff. But you're really kind of choreographing how they play out the next 5 years of their lives, and really helping them find a path that feels like the right path for them. And, as you said, like, we're in a new world now. So what does that look like, and how are they going to stand apart? And so I actually used the weird versus wide line on them last night. And it was quite interesting response at 25 for a 25-year-old group, because it's the opposite of what they've been living in to this point in their life for the most part. When you're in high school, you don't want to be the weird one. Not a good place to be. University, maybe in undergrad, you find a small group like you, right? But it's still like not super safe to step out of that. Now they're coming into an MBA program where everybody kind of looks, sounds the same. And yet I'm saying to them, the only way you're going to stand apart when you leave this program is to be as weird as you possibly can be, because that's
your differentiator. We have to find our differentiator.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, in fact, I coach people who are, I do some like career coaching, and this is something I'm also going to incorporate into this coaching that I was explaining is, like, why should I hire you? What makes you different? And with so many people alike, we were saying before, there's so many people who are alike out there. What is it that makes you stand out as somebody that is different and gets it in a different way? And people need to kind of, a la Rich Litvin, in a way that you need to stand out in a way that the pricing becomes a non-issue, because you are so unique that you're the only one who makes sense for them to hire. And so you're not even, this is also like the blue ocean strategy type of thing, is you're no longer competing on price. You're like, that's no longer a piece of it. And that's your differentiator that makes you unique. And you need to move into that space, into that quadrant.
Yeah. It's been interesting in the past week. We have a small group, and there's one coach in there who's in LA who works with a lot of celebrities. She's got a $500,000 a year client. But she said her claim to fame is actually that the 3 people she said no to, because she didn't connect with them. They wanted her, but she didn't want them in return. And I love that. She said every time she said no to somebody based on that energy feel, her next level client showed up, right?
Wow.
which is really interesting. And it was a great insight for our small group, is to say, well, maybe it's just as important that we're auditioning our clients as it is that they're auditioning us, because it needs, it's like the dating example. It needs to work both ways for it to work.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good that she can be in that position, and that, because it's sometimes we have to make decisions for the wrong reasons, and maybe there's the argument that you shouldn't be doing that, but it's hard to say, guaranteed income, even if guaranteed income, even if it's not a perfect fit, versus no income.
Yeah.
And and it's hard, like, it's really, that is kind of like the life journey for so many people. And it's not just about coaching. I mean, that's like the bigger picture, is making choices about career, about everything. Is, do I choose this one thing right here because it's right here, and out of desperation, sort of, it's almost like desperation, because you feel like you have to take it, versus holding out for what's really right. And what's the price that you pay? Because there is a price you always pay when you take this wrong one, because sometimes when it's not right, it haunts you.
Absolutely.
And for some, it never worked. And you know what? It's never right.
Yeah. 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 It's something we talk about with the students all the time, is a cash flow job is actually an okay thing if you accept that that is what its role is. Like, you go to, you live in California, so there's actresses and actors all around who are working as waiters and waitresses and baristas, and right, because that's a requirement to then chase the dream.
Right. You have to do that.
Yeah. And in coaching, and I'm really glad you brought this up, actually, because I think, a lot of coaches will be watching this. There are, and Rich Litvín's book is a great example of a model that, if you accept it on face value and say it's the only way to do something, can take you down a dangerous path, because not everybody is going to have a coaching practice that has 10 clients paying a bunch of money and a lifestyle around that, and nor maybe should everybody have that as the model. And along the way, you will make all kinds of compromises and make all kinds of different deals with different kinds of clients that make the whole package work for you in a practical sense, right? Of making a living and being able to continue doing what you're doing. And so, like, how do you approach that in terms of how you put your coaching business together? Because there's the optimal Ellen coaching business, and I'm sure you've got that model in your mind, but then there's the practical one.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge. I think, especially when you're starting out in your coaching career, you really have to, take whatever comes your way, because you need to build the experience. And to some degree, you may not even know what's optimal. And it's really important, I think, just to get, as going to, David, Matthews, I'm not sure how he pronounces his name, said, Syed, SYED, in Bounce, and even Malcolm Gladwell, when they talk about the 10,000 hours or 10 years, you need to get the experience under your belt. And if you're too selective at the beginning, you're not going to get that experience. And getting the experience in and of itself is the huge value, whether it's a bad one or a good one. Each one of those is the lesson. It's like falling down and learning, how to get up, and learning that the fall is the lesson and the experience. And so taking everything that comes your way when you're a junior coach is actually, to your benefit, because, you learn. I mean, I've had some clients that seemed like they were going to be really difficult clients, and they're actually sort of my favorite to some degree, because I love, especially when they're really pushing back and helping turn them around so that they learned, so they can see the value of coaching, and they realize that it's not a punishment, it's a gift,
Mm.
and helping the ones that come through an executive, like a stakeholder environment, corporate, not when they come to you on their own,
Right.
because that's obviously totally different. But when they come to you through a stakeholder, a corporate coaching, that it's a gift for them, and but helping them turn around. But when you're a beginning coach, you need to get the experience. So I would recommend at that point to be less selective and just be open to the learning and the experience, and figuring out who you are as a coach and what styles work and what styles don't, and how you connect with coaches, how you connect with your clients.
Mm.
So I think, again, it's learning that experience, learning how to get really good at something. And then as you move up, then, when you can be more selective, then it's really about determining, like, what is it? Who do I want to be? Who am I best for? And how do I want to define myself? And if I'm going to say I love my job every day, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. And that's been a conversation I've been having this week. We did a session on this idea of setting an improbable goal, or like a nearly impossible, very highly improbable goal. And what would it take then to make that actually sort of the place that you come from every day? And you've heard this language, being around the same community. And it was a really interesting experience, because it's my wife and I have been talking for several years about the idea of creating a place in a country where we would love to be, in a location we would love to be, and then bringing people there. And it had always been this sort of future state thing that we were talking about. And then I got thinking about my own career, and I realized that actually all the way through my career, for even early in my career, I was always stepping forward to organize coaching conferences. And I ran national conferences, I ran international conferences. I'd go to lots of conferences. I loved the interplay of different perspectives. And even when I left sport to move into coaching in the business world, it was a conference I was at that actually was a switch. It was a conference where they had sports people, business people, and then people from other industries. And I've talked about this before, but there was one talk where they had a Formula One person that does the pit crew, where they switch the tires and fill up with gas and all that. They had the lady that runs the Juilliard School of Dance, and then they had a director from Broadway. We were in New York City for the conference. So, and they were talking about performing under pressure. And it was amazing, because as they talked, the language they used was exactly the same, right? And it was this like sort of light bulb moment for me about, I haven't been a sports coach, I've been a performance coach, right? And I've taught people how to perform under pressure, and I've always enjoyed that. And I've always enjoyed being in these environments where you could bring different perspectives together that seemingly were from different places, but when you connected them, there was like this sort of insight that came from it. So now we're talking about this goal in a very present tense of creating a place in Costa Rica that coaches can come to with their clients to experience this sort of interplay between nature and whatever the coach's specialty is, in this unique environment that would be, beautiful and very calming, and bring the right kind of energy to the kind of environment we want to be in. But like that was nowhere in my coaching mind in terms of a business perspective, until I just kind of had this light bulb discussion this past week about what would be the most improbable version of my coaching practice. And I said, well, this has always been sort of part of it, but it was almost like the retirement plan as opposed to the now plan.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, coaching was my retirement plan, not my now plan. So, but no, you know what? I actually, even from a meditation perspective, I actually have people do meditations on, and I would say if I had a magic wand and I were able to dissipate all of your self-limiting beliefs and all the things that are holding you back and all the all the it's not possibles and it would never happen. What could you imagine? Like go really big, and I think I may have mentioned this when we spoke before, but it's like, if you want to be a singer, don't imagine yourself singing in a bar. Imagine yourself singing in, like a concert hall, like Staples Center, with, like a huge place. And then from there, imagine it, and then I ask my clients then to start writing about it, get really palpable and like imagine it, write it down. Who did you have to be? What did you have to believe about yourself? What negative thoughts did you have to let go of? And really, what is that experience like there then? Imagine, where do you live? What does your life look like? How much are you earning? What are you doing? Be there. Be there. It's in 3 years, 5 years, it's 2025 or whatever. Be there. And then also, then you come back and you go, okay, if that's my future, what do I need to do to make that happen? How do I reverse engineer to make that happen? I have 3 years, I have 5 years. What do I need to do? What experiences do I need? What people do I need to meet? What knowledge do I need to acquire? What is it that I need to do? And then you have a really clear plan and you know exactly what steps you need to put in. And then you're really much more like married to the action planning, because like it's there, you see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll go back to our dating analogy because I remember seeing, I can't remember the gentleman's name now, but very successful business guy. And he had a sketchbook that was part of his life all the way through his life. He'd always liked to sketch things. And I think he was like 25 years old and he had sketched the vision of a beautiful woman in his sketchbook. And at 40, he got married and he brought out the sketchbook. And it was incredible. It was basically a rendition of his wife now. And, who knows how, we don't know, we know so little about how our brains work, but clearly having that vision and having the energy around what we want to create has an impact on the directions and the choices and the people that are attracted to us and all of that, right?
Oh my God. Now we can go off towards like the whole idea of quantum physics and Bruce Lipton and like bending the universe and manifestation and, like we can go. Oh my God.
We go really weird now. Yeah. Well, this won't be the last conversation we have because we have so many interconnected parts of our lives. We now realize that. So look, I want to really thank you for coming on. I know we tried this before and we got mixed up, and so I appreciate coming back. And it's a total pleasure to meet you and to connect. And actually, the energy feels better today than it did when we tried the first time. So it was meant to be that we ended up here today.
This is so much better.
Yeah, totally. So Ellen, thanks. I will make sure to include all the links to how to reach you in the notes with the show when we release it.
Thank you.
And can't wait to connect one day in person when that's allowed.
Absolutely. That's right.
Yeah. And we'll,
you're in Toronto, right?
I'm in Toronto, yeah.
I've never been there and I've wanted to go. So
absolutely. And we'll also invite you to Costa Rica to the retreat, and you can bring some of your clients with you and have a great time.
Awesome. I have friends who have done yoga retreats in Costa Rica. So if you have any questions about that, happy to share.
I'd love to. I appreciate the offer. All right. All the best. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Enjoyed
Bye-bye.
it. All right. Bye.